Alright, so this is the part 2 reading of the January 1984 Byte magazine, and here we're going to just focus solely on an article about Term-Mite. I'm hoping to learn more about terminals in general by reading this article. Before we begin, I wanted to show you this cool ad for a Hitachi floppy disk drive, 3-inch there. Check this out, you could get a 512 kilobyte semi-disk for $1,000. How much is that per byte you'd be paying for? And when I first read this ad, I had no idea what to think. Global Thermonuclear War? Well, come to find out, it is a fast-action, high-strategy game with full-color graphics. Here it says at launch, you discover the computer has deleted all targeting data for your weapons. Presented with NORAD-style strategic displays, you watch the trajectory of the missile track across the globe as you frantically retarget your weapon system and prepare for your enemy's attack. Do you strike before or after the enemy launches its first wave? I mean, there's only one right answer to that question, right? I wonder if somebody out there in YouTube land has made a video of playing this game. Here's another Starfire game, and this is an ad right next to the one we just saw, so the layout looks like this. But in this Time Machine 1 game, you were the 4th test pilot to fly the Joint Air Force-NASA XTM series experimental craft, a vehicle which transverses through time. Okay, so I just want to say one thing about this article. I thought the first paragraph was particularly good. When several of us at Byte saw the Macintosh, we were seriously concerned about the fate of the Lisa in the face of the Macintosh, which is a machine that is 1/3 its price and clearly superior in some areas. Apple has answered these concerns by announcing 2 versions of the Lisa 2, along with the Macintosh, at its annual stockholders meeting on January 24th, so that'd be 1984, right? Seeing how this is the February issue. So I wanted to read that paragraph just to say or think about when I was young, I thought the Macintosh was the name of the company. And do any of you out there remember that movie, early 90s? A kid gets a lot of money. He tricks people into thinking he works for a rich person. I forgot the name of the movie. Put it in the comments if you happen to know, but he goes by the name Macintosh. And I always, even ever since then, I always thought Macintosh was such a cool name. At least a lot cooler than Lisa. Sorry if there's any Lisas out there watching. Well, I won't read the new features, just wanted to make that comment. Alright, so here's what we really came here for. Build the Circuit Seller Term-Mite ST Smart Terminal Part 2. Programming and Use. The supply... Dang it, it's a part 2. And though this is a part 2 video, I did not read part 1, so I'll have to look for that in an earlier issue. Maybe it's the one right before this. I'll check that out, and if there's good information, create a follow-up video to this. And I'm going to zoom in more than I normally do here, just to try to ensure you all can read from home. Last month, in part 1, I introduced you to the Term-Mite ST Intelligent Video Display Terminal. Shown in Photo 1, it is designed around the new National Semiconductor NS455 Terminal Management Processor, TMP. The self-contained terminal controller chip permits the essential features to be provided by only 21 integrated circuits. This month, I'd like to pick up the story beginning with a discussion of the firmware, that is, the program logic inscribed in ROM. This firmware is used to control all the terminal's functions. We'll look at the functions of the firmware, the configuration switch, settings. That's an awkward way of putting these 2 words together, the configuration switch, settings. The escape, capital E, sequences and control functions. And finally, demonstrate putting a new character on the screen. Alright, so factory supplied control program. The control program has 4 main stations, the initialization code, the main keyboard scanning and wait loop, the display processing routine, and the interrupt processing routines. Since keyboard scanning may be a new technique to some of you, the logic flow of this code section will be described in detail. The program is constructed in a modular fashion. A general flowchart is shown, while a memory map is shown in Figure 2. So it checks those I/O circuits, then it reads the configuration switches and loads the NS455A's registers with their initial values. Many values must be loaded into registers before the terminal can work. Among them are the timing chain constants that specify character cell parameters. Okay, so some good notes here. The most noteworthy one is that we need these timing chain constants, these values put into registers so that character cell parameters are set. And it looks like it's not just to specify those character cells, they are also values for cursor definition, horizontal and vertical timing, values for the character attributes and other display controls. So the characters have attributes and the display has controls. There's also values to determine character positions. That feels most familiar to me. And then values that set the data rate parity. And then values to determine and values that set the data rate parity for half-duplex transmission mode, etc. After everything has been initialized, the program enters the character processing loop, which is often referred to as the main wait loop. If a scanned keyboard is being used, scanning occurs every 10 milliseconds. When the hardware detects a character, a branching instruction passes control to the display processing routine. Characters typed on a parallel encoded keyboard are handled somewhat differently, as are characters received from the host computer or another terminal. When a character arrives from one of these sources, the hardware of the Term-Mite ST generates an interrupt, and control automatically passes into one of the interrupt handling routines. In the case of the parallel keyboard, its data strobe signal generates an external interrupt, an interrupt relying on hardware outside the processor. The interrupt handler causes the TMP to read the typed character from the I/O port, cue it for display, transmit it if necessary, and return to wait for the next character. When the hardware receives data on the serial input line, it generates an interrupt control branches to several routines that determine what type of interrupt occurred and take appropriate action. Oh, that's a rough sentence, but I understand what he's saying. The first test checks for received characters in the buffer of the UART, which is the Universal Asynchronous Receiver Transmitter. Okay, so that first branch checks for received characters in this buffer. I always see this UART acronym, but I can never remember what it stands for. So that's that first branch. If a character is found in the buffer, it is queued for display, that is, placed in the holding area for data to be shown on the screen. If no character is found, the register contents are tested for a match with the special values that indicates an empty transmit buffer condition, in which case the program tries to fill the transmit buffer. The final test is for the internal timer. Timer interrupts happen every 10 milliseconds and are used to trigger the keyboard scanning. If the Term-Mite ST is not set up to use a scanned keyboard, the internal timer interrupt produces no activity. Because of the operating differences between scanned and encoded keyboards, the control program contains two routines for reading a keyboard character. The encoded keyboards are handled by the external interrupt routine. Very few processor instructions are required to fetch the character, since the data comes in from the I/O port already encoded as values in the ubiquitous Ascii character set established by Ascii. Alright, I butchered that sentence, but this is, such an educational resource. I just want to make sure everyone knows what Ascii and Ascii are. So let's read the contrast. Getting a character from the scanned keyboard takes a fairly lengthy sub-program, which must examine the switch matrix of the keyboard for closures and convert that data into a meaningful ASCII character. The two keyboard routines, however, merge at the point where the character has been identified. A common section of code is used to display, transmit, and queue the character. Things get interesting around here after TMP registers are initialized. Remember, TMP stands for Terminal Management Processor. So those registers are initialized. Then if there's an interrupt queue character, yes, right? If that's yes, the logic asks if it's an escape character. If yes, of course, you process that escape sequence. If it's not an escape character, then we're wondering if it's a control character. If not, it must be a standard character, so these will then be processed over here. And for your own sanity, I will now go back to reading. A keyboard scanning logic. The scan keyboard is fundamentally a set of push-button switches arranged in a set of rows and columns and wired together with diodes every 10 milliseconds. These are triggered by the internal timer interrupt. The Term-Mite ST looks at each row and column in turn to find out if any of the switches have been closed. The basic scanning algorithm is shown in Figure 3. Okay, so let's take a break to go look at Figure 3, as they say, to check out that algorithm. Okay, wow, I had to scroll down through several pages to get to Figure 3, a flowchart of the keyboard scanning routine. There isn't much to say here, but I'll try to do a quick rundown. So first, is the keyboard enabled? Yep. So now we're going to scan a matrix column. We're asking the question, is there a key closure detected? If yes, we're going to go and convert the scan code to Ascii, the Ascii equivalent from a table. We're going to factor in shift, control, and caps lock, and then store that character. Remember, we jumped down there because of this part. The basic scanning algorithm is shown in Figure 3. Alright, so I think I'm right here. The key value is compared to the value found during the last scan. If they are the same, the routine assumes that the key simply has not yet been released from the previous stroke and ignores the key press condition. Well, that's interesting. I never even thought about the fact that the code is doing its thing while a person's finger may still be on the key. Alright, so I think we have our answer right here. When typing, most people hold down each key long enough for many scans to occur, except when the repeat key is in use. The terminal assumes that continued closure of the key switch should not produce output. If the scanning routine finds that the most recently read key values is indeed a new character, it stores a value and resumes scanning. If two key switches are found simultaneously closed in one column, the two characters are processed in turn before the scan is restarted. After all the columns have been scanned, the routine checks the character value storage to see if any keys were pressed. If the number of hits found is greater than 4, it exits with no output. Valid characters produced by 1 to 4 key presses per scan are queued in the keyboard buffer for display and output. The routine checks the repeat key. If it is being held down, the program initially delays 1 second and then begins to queue the same character again at intervals of 0.1 second. If no keys were detected during the scan, the program cleans out the keyboard buffer storage area, resets the interrupt mask, does some housekeeping, and returns from the interrupt. And then I just wanted to note that they are talking about having a repeat key. This sounds awesome. I don't remember ever seeing this on any keyboard. So going back up to 1A here, this is the chunk of the logic providing reset and initialization. Here's our main wait loop. Here's our display processing. I wonder what housekeeping is. Nonetheless, here's our interrupts. Oh, look at there. We got a light pin. I've definitely pointed out those ads here in these magazines. Here's some external interrupts. Looks like they'll finish this section by talking about a numeric keypad. I will skip that, going to configuring for use. The biggest annoyance of today's advanced intelligent terminals is that they can be complicated to use. When you unpack a new unit, you can expect to spend at least an hour trying to set the switches for all the proper optional modes and functions. And I know you see a little bit of it down here, so let's skip and check out a picture. Look at that repeat key. So yeah, pretty cool looking. So we talked about how it'd take an hour to get things going. At such times, I fondly recall first plugging in my completed TV typewriter in late 1973. There were no confusing configuration switches or escape sequences. I just typed. That is funny. So the Term-Mite intelligent. Well, I'm not sure what ST stands for. The Term-Mite, though small, was designed to be powerful, so it has to include some options that you set before use. I have tried to keep them as simple as is compatible with flexibility. These options are both hardware and software configurable in the Term-Mite ST3 8 position dip. as in dual inline pin switches. These dip switches let you set up the unit to assume certain operating conditions and parameters when you first turn it on. Once the terminal has been turned on, most of the switch preset parameters can be changed. Let's jump down to the control code section here. It's a bit more interesting. As in most ASCII encoded applications, control codes are generated at the keyboard by simultaneously holding down the control key and one other alphabetic or character key. I never call it that, but I should start control codes. How many control codes do you know? Besides copy and paste, my most used one would be undo. So the binary value emitted is within the special low range of ASCII codes designated for the control of devices. These codes do not normally cause any symbol to be printed or displayed, so they are referred to as non-printing. A list of the control codes as used by the Term-Mite ST running with the standard firmware is shown in Table 2 on page 96. An ASCII control code is often abbreviated by the corresponding printing character preceded by a caret or an up arrow, thus caret G stands for control G. Anybody who used Emacs will know something like this is very familiar because there are like a billion control codes for you to memorize when using Emacs or Spacemacs. Escape sequences are more complex. These consist of characters that are mostly in the range of regular ASCII values, but the normally printable codes are transmitted following the special ASCII escape character. This escape character is so named because the characters that follow it escape from their normal meanings. I just always need examples to actually comprehend things. In the context of an escape sequence, almost any meaning is possible for any character, although some escape sequences are widely used, and one set has achieved the status of an ANSI standard equal to ASCII itself. In Term-Mite, an escape sequence consists of at least two keystrokes, the escape key followed by an uppercase letter in the set A through Z, with some unused. Oh my gosh, so come on guys, just give us an example. Alright, so if you scroll down a few pages, here are those examples. This escape C one is cool. This is where you go into control mode. This operation permits you to see all the normally non-displayable ASCII characters, such as return or line feed. On the display screen, the control characters are displayed as reverse video, half intensity, uppercase letters A through Z, plus some punctuation are used. In addition, the message control mode is displayed on the status line. So very cool. So C to go on in control mode, F to get out of it. And I know I jumped down here, but above this table is the control code list. Can you imagine accidentally hitting Control L to clear the screen? So back to the article. When power to the Term-Mite is first turned on, the three groups of configuration switches are read and their values stored in appropriate registers in the TMP. Again, TMP, Terminal Management Processor. The switches appear to the processor as memory-mapped I/O devices. Logic 1 is considered to be the on or closed position. National Semiconductor software refers to the groups as switches 4, 5, and 6, so I have used the same designations in the Term-Mite's schematic. Their configurations and various settings are shown in these tables. Before I show those tables, back when I was reading about the control codes and the escape sequences, there were a lot more. I was just reading that page. It looks like they spread this across 2 pages, so just wanted to take note of that. Here's figures 4, 5, and 6. Here's table 4, the functions of the switch positions and configuration. Switch 4. Here's a switch signal, and here's the effect. So we're going with 50 or 60 hertz. A logic 1 specifies 60 hertz while logic 0 sets 50 hertz operation. This is interesting. EXT-TST, the external test flag, is used to force a jump to external memory located at hexadecimal address 800. This test is only made if self-test is also selected. Right, that's down here. The author of the self-test code must take care of either returning to the supplied standard program or handling all processing from that point on. For the control freaks out there, cursor select is a good one. So 00 would give you a solid underline cursor. You could go with a blinking underline cursor or a solid block cursor or blinking block cursor. When using VI, I always get screwed up by that. Yeah, pause here if you wanted to read Table 5. These are not the most interesting tables to read, nor are there associated figures here. If you just want to write basic programs, you will probably never have to do more than use the default switch settings. If, however, you want to use the terminal as part of a screen template inquiry transaction system, you'll want to use all the character attributes and graphics options. Some forms of the escape sequences cannot be generated through the keyboard. Ones with leading 0 attribute values, for example. These must be supplied by the host computer. One of the easiest ways to do this is to use the character $$ function in BASIC, giving the decimal values of the required characters. So this is the part of the article where actually watching a video of someone doing that would be best. Beautiful advertisement by Turbo Pascal here. Nice, some basic code to produce blinking characters. If you dig in here, it'll be printing. This is how we print in on the screen, and then blinking characters will be blinking, I assume. Not the funnest programming language to read. Here's some reverse video characters, reverse video double height, double width characters. Down here is a program to demonstrate all internal character attributes and the drawing of borders with line graphic characters. I'll do you a favor and scroll past all of this code. But that's what made Byte magazine so cool to me back in the day. Oh, and since we don't have a video, though, they are giving us screenshots. I just love this stuff. But I'm going to skip reading that. So with that, my friends, this is the end of the video. A couple more nice advertisements for you to look at in the next article. I don't know if I'll read it, but they go over Chaos Manor gets its long-awaited IBM PC. Thank you for watching.